All right, students, this is Unit 6, Quads and Polygons, Lesson 6.2, Parallelograms. Taking a look here, make sure you have your parent or signature guardian sign-off, as well as a date and time notation and location. Let's recap. Last class, we learned these four equations. We learned the sum of interior angles, sides minus 2 times 180. The sum of exterior angles will always be 360. Each angle of a regular polygon, sum over sides. Ain't this fun? The sum of interior angles, sides minus 2 times 180. So we learned that the sum of the interior angles is sides minus 2 times 180. The sum of the exterior angles will always be 360. To get a single angle, it's sum over sides, which technically is two equations because there's one sum, which is sides minus 2 times 180, and then there's another sum, which is always 360. So technically there's four equations there that we learned last class dealing with angles of a polygon. Taking a look here, here's an example we learned. Let's do this one together. When you're working with these problems, it's really important you watch out for keywords and phrases. The most important ones are these. Interior and exterior. Regular and sum. One each, similar concepts. Is, are, was, were, by far the most important words you'll ever see because those imply an equal sign. Last one is the number gone. Is it a pentagon, a hexagon, etc.? Watch out for those prefixes. So when you do these kind of problems, the first thing you want to do is watch those key words. This says a single interior angle of a regular polygon measures 108 degrees. What is the polygon called? Let's underline our keywords. We have a single interior angle. A regular polygon measures 108 degrees. What is it called? Called, that implies we don't know the number of sides. If we did, we'd call it either a hexagon, a pentagon, a decagon, a dodecagon. So we don't know n here. We're working with interior and we're working with 1. So that's going to be sum over sides where our sum is that. So we're going to write out the equation. 1 interior angle, and it's regular, so they're all the same, is sum over sides, interior sum, over the number of sides. Notice I have two sides to this equation. Two sides and an equal sign. Always write your equations with two sides because this 108 does not plug in on the right, it's right here. That is your interior angle. So we're going to write 108 equals n minus 2 times 180 over n. My n's are getting sloppy here. Over 1. Now we cross multiply. Distribute that 180. So from here, I'm going to minus 108 n to get it on the right. And I'm going to add 360 to get it on the left. So I end up with 360 equals 180 minus 108 is 72n. Our n here is 360 divided by 72, that's 5. But I didn't ask you for n here. Always ask yourself, what were we actually looking for? I want to know what this, what this polygon is actually called. 5-sided, it is a pentagon. We're going to be studying something called the quad family tree. Keywords today: parallelogram, rectangle, rhombus, trapezoid, diagonals, and just the word parallel. I'd like you to take a few seconds and just name as many of these quadrilaterals as you can. Go. Just name them. Okay, this is a trapezoid. Of course, this is your standard parallelogram. Parallelogram with all equal sides, that's called a rhombus. A parallelogram with 4 right angles, of course, that's a rectangle. Believe it or not, a kite is an actual geometric figure. It's one in which you have consecutive congruent sides, but not opposite congruent sides. Of course, you have your humble square. We're going to focus just on the parallelogram today. This is called your quad family tree. It's kind of like a family tree of shapes. Please be aware that you will eventually be required to memorize this, all these different qualities. Now we're going to focus strictly today on these two. We're going to focus on your standard, just generic quadrilateral, the qualities of it, and then we're going to focus in at a parallelogram and talk about these qualities of a parallelogram. Next class, we'll talk about the family of parallelograms, which includes rectangle, rhombus, and squares. Let's not overlook the simple stuff. A quadrilateral is 4 sides. And it's basically like 2 triangles, and each triangle is 180. So a quad, the angles sum 360, or 2 triangles. So there's your quad. There's your patriarchal tree, if you will, of the family history. And then you have the first descendant, which is a parallelogram. We're going to cover some specific qualities to a parallelogram in the next few minutes. In a parallelogram, we have these key qualities. First, since a parallelogram is a quad, it has 4 sides. And it also has angles which sum 360 degrees. Now, these 5 qualities are unique just to parallelograms and descendants of parallelograms. And you're going to remember them by the acronym of OCD. Keep that acronym in mind. Ready? These are the qualities of a parallelogram. These you must memorize. Let's start with the most basic. It's a parallelogram because opposite sides are parallel. Opposite sides are not only are parallel, but of course those lengths there are equal or congruent. So opposite sides congruent. Opposite angles are congruent too. So angles that are across from each other, those blue angles and these squiggle angles here, those are equal across from each other. Consecutive angles, angles that are next to each other, they're not equal, they add up to 180. So angles that are next to each other are supplementary, or better known as adding up to 180. Last one is the diagonals bisect each other. So the diagonal from this corner to this corner, and this corner to this corner, they go through each other's midpoints. So that's a midpoint going both ways. We can go hatch marks here, double hatch marks there. It's not equal all the way around because one diagonal is longer than the other, but the diagonals are both cut in half. Now, to help memorize these qualities, just remember this acronym, OCD. That stands for opposite, 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 consecutive, diagonal. Say that with me 3 times. These are the 5 qualities of a parallelogram. OCD, opposite, 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 consecutive, diagonal. OCD, opposite, 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 consecutive, diagonal. One more time. OCD, opposite, 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 consecutive, diagonal. Opposite sides are parallel. Let's just make a quick notation. Opposite sides are parallel. Opposite sides are congruent to each other. Opposite angles are congruent, so angles are congruent. Opposite consecutive angles are supplementary, or they add up to 180. And the diagonals bisect each other. They cut each other in half. OCD. Keep these 5 qualities in mind as we do the next couple problems. It says, below is a parallelogram. We're going to solve for all variables. Let's keep OCD in mind. The first OCD is opposite sides are parallel. That's really not going to be helpful here, but the second one is opposite sides are equal. So that means these are equal. That makes this easy. So I can just do 4s plus 5 equals 6s plus 1. Write that out and do the algebra with me. So you solve for s there, and you see that s equals 2. Let's just double check to see if that's right. 4 times 2 is 8 plus 5. That makes this 13. 6 times 2 is 12. Plus 1, that makes it 13. So I know I'm correct. And then we go this way again. Opposite sides are equal. So I know 6 equals 5r plus 1. And you should see already right now that the only way this works is if that r there is a 1. So it's 5 times 1 plus 1, that makes it 6. So we don't even need to do algebra there. R equals 1. And that's because we solved this with that second quality, opposite sides are congruent in length. Taking a look here. Next one, again, it's a parallelogram. Let's write our OCD out. And our goal here is to figure out all the variables using what we know. This one, it looks like we're dealing with angles. So the ones that deal with angles is this third one, the fact that opposite angles are congruent. And this one right here, the fact that consecutive angles add up to 180. So these are the two ones that deal with angles. Opposite angles congruent, consecutive angles add up to 180. So right off the bat, opposite angles are congruent. I know 125 equals 5h. That's easy to solve for. So h equals 25. So that's one variable down. Now here, these two angles are also equal, but we really can't do anything with that because we have two different variables here. We have a j here, and we have a k there. So we're going to have to do something else. So we just did use opposite angles are congruent. Let's use consecutive angles. Let's see what we can do there. That means the sides that are next to each other have to add up to 180. So that means this angle 125 and this angle right there, they have to add up to 180. That's what consecutive means. So if I do 180 minus 125, I get 55. So that means this corner right here is 55. But we want the value of k, so we're going to write it out. So 55 equals 7k minus 1. Let's solve for k. So I see here that k is going to be 56 divided by 7, so k equals 8. Now, opposite angles are congruent, so if this is 55, this up here is 55 as well, which means we can get our last variable by simply doing 11j equals 55. And we get j equals 5. Now for this one right here, if you take a look, we're asking ourselves, how do we know this is a parallel, or it is a parallelogram? How do we know that this triangle ADC, ADB, which is the red triangle, is congruent to CBD, which is the blue triangle? Now remember, triangles are congruent by side, angle, sides, side, 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 angle, side, angle, or angle, angle, side. Let me give you something that's really easy to work with here. We know that with armpits of the Z, these are equal. That gives us an angle. We also know that these sides are equal, and this is a reflexive side. So guess what? We could do side, angle, side. But we also know that these sides are equal, which gives us 3 sets of sides. So we could do side, side, side. We have armpits of the Z going this way, which means we can pick up another pair of angles And that could give us angle, side, angle. And the fact that opposite angles are equal as well, this also can read angle, angle, side. So basically, when you're given a triangle and you're told it's a parallelogram, any one of these four work. I'd like you just to choose one of those four and do a very short 2 to 3 sentence summary why the triangles are congruent. Just write, I know that because, takes 2 or 3 sentences. Now, you've noticed that I've actually skipped a page here between these 2 pages. That's because that earlier page is actually the easier one. So I'd like you to do that one on your own. Find everything you can. There's a page between these 2. I'd like you to do that one on your own. Fill it out. Follow the process of OCD. This page was actually harder. That's why I did that one with you. So I'd like you to backtrack and do the teacher examples, which are easier. Do those on your own. Fill them out. Bring them to class.